In the last video, we learned how to generate random numbers and create a guessing game where the user should guess the number generated. In today's video, we will learn how to create template functions. A template function is a function that doesn't have specific return type and doesn't have a specific type for its parameters. Meaning, when I tell you to create a add function that has two parameters of type integer and returns an integer, what you'll do is you'll say int add, int num1 and int num2 like this. So this is the function signature. It has a specific return type of integer and its two parameters have specific types. There are two parameters of type integer, right? But what is a template function? A template function doesn't have these specific types. What it has something called placeholder type or template type if you want. So how do we create a template function? Let's do the same thing. Let's create an add method, but this time it will have placeholder types. So what we'll do is we'll say template like this, and inside those two signs we'll write type name like this, and we'll give our placeholder type a name. The most common way to give it a name is to name it T. This is a naming convention. You can go with it, but I'll go ahead and write something called type like this. So there's no problem, you can just write T like this, but I'll go ahead and write type. Now let's create our function. Because we want to create a template function, what we'll do is we'll use this placeholder type. So I'll give it a return type of type, our placeholder type, and I'll call the function add, as well as its parameters, param1 and param2 will have the same return type, or excuse me, will have the same type, which is the placeholder type we just created right here. So this is the function signature. Now instead of this, let's go ahead and give it an implementation. So I'll go ahead and say return param1 plus param2. So I'm adding two parameters that I don't know their type. They are of type, placeholder type of the template function. So how does this work? Let's go ahead and go down to the main. I'll create two integer variables called num1 and num2. I will add, or I'll assign to num1 the value of 12 and assign to num2 the value of 14. And now I'm going to call or create a cout and go ahead and say add. So I'm calling the add method or function, excuse me. Let me add end line here, and inside I'll give it two parameters. I'll say num1 and num2. Now does this work? Let's go ahead and see. As you can see, it works properly. But how does it actually work? So basically, when you create a template function, you don't give it a specific type. You give it a placeholder type or a template type. That means you can give it whatever type you want in the main. So right here, I gave it two integers. So those two parameters right here became integers, two integers. So we added two integers and the return type should be an integer. Well, internally, what the compiler will do is that it will instantiate or create its own function based on the given type or the type we give it. So because we gave it two integers, what the compiler will do, instead of working on the template function, it will create a specific function. Like it will create int add, int param1 like this. Let me write correctly, param1 int param2 like this, and it will say return param1 plus param2. Same thing, but instead it has specific types. So what the compiler will do is it will give the template function specific types based on what you give it right here. And now what if I go ahead and let me copy this line, and instead of giving it two integers, let me go ahead and give it two doubles like this. So I'm going to say 2.4 and 2.5. Okay, let me go ahead and delete this right here like this, and let's see if it will work. Okay, so I'm going to compile and then run. As you can see, it did work. So again, what the compiler does is that it will create its own function or instantiate its own functions based on the types you give it. So here we gave it two integers. It will create an add method or function that takes a return type of integer and two parameters of type integer, and it will add those two parameters. But here, because you gave the template function two doubles, that means the compiler will create or instantiate a function that has a return type of double and that takes two parameters of type double and add those two doubles together. So this is the concept of template function. You can give it whatever type you want because it doesn't have a specific type. It has a placeholder type. Now go ahead and complete this exercise. Create three template functions: subtraction, multiplication, and division, to do these following three things. So let's go ahead and do it together. So I'm going down here and I'm going to say template type name. I'm going to use T, And right here, I'm going to say t sub for subtraction, t param1 and t param2. These are the placeholder type. And now I'm going to say return param1 minus param2. Now for the multiplication, template type name, I'm going to give it the same name t like this. I'm going to say t mul, and for multiplication, t param1 and t param2. This is fairly simple. So now I'm going to say return like this param1 by param2. Okay, and now let's go ahead and do for the division. So I'm going to say template type name like this. Also I'm going to give it t, and now I'm going to say t divide like this, and I'm going to say t param1 and param2 like this, and I'm going to simply say return param1 like this divided by param2 like this. And now we created 4 template functions. These are the 3 template functions needed for the exercise, and now let's go ahead and use them inside the main. So right here I'm going to say something like cout, I'm going to say sub num1 and num2. I'm going to say here first of all end l. Now I'm going to say cout, for example, mul, and I will give it 3 doubles, or 2 doubles, excuse me, 3.4 and 87.5 for example. And now for the division or the divide function, I'll say 12 divided by 2. Okay, so now let's go ahead and run the code to see if it will work. So compile and then launch. As you can see, it will definitely work because these are template functions. They don't have specific types, rather they have placeholder types. And so when you have placeholder types, that means you can give it whatever type you want, and the compiler will go ahead and do its job and instantiate the function with specific types based on the type you give it. Now, if you want to create a template function that is of type void, that means doesn't return anything, but the parameters, you want them to have a placeholder type, well, yes, that works. So you can say something like this type template type name t, and you could say now void and call the function whatever you want, and go ahead and give the parameters only placeholder types like this. So param1 and param2. This completely works. Okay, so if you wanted to create a template function of return type void, but you wanted a template function, so you can do it the following way. Now you might ask, when will you use template functions? Well, sometimes you want to create a function that works on any type. So instead of creating a function that works on integers, then creating a same function that works on strings, for example, this is a waste of time. With template functions, it allows you to use any type you want, because the compiler in the end will eventually create an instance of this function using specific types, depending on what you give this template function in the main. Alright, this is it on template functions in C++. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with this C++ tutorial. Now, thank you for watching this video. I invite you to click on one of these end screens that will appear right now, and I hope to see you in the next video.